Right, good. Well, and Evan, I tell you what, the one thing I was going to jump into first, when you look at what's been going on in the world, I have to start with an NFL topic because this week too, and of course it relates to all the teams. It relates to the Raiders, and the Raiders have had such an amazing history of diversity amongst hiring. I mean, they hired the first black head coach. They did all this stuff when they hired Art Shell. But this week we've heard that there's a proposal in front of the NFL saying that your draft position could be improved if you hire a black coach, minority coach, or a GM, meaning that let's say I build a team for 10 years, okay, I'm rewarded for that by draft position and stuff like that. Or let's say I just took over a team and I need to rebuild a team. Now, if a team goes out and hires a minority head coach or a GM, they might jump ahead of me, even though I have the greater need, even though they might have been the Super Bowl champions the year before. Evan, I listen, there is a serious issue with diversity in the NFL, in the coaching ranks, in the front office. There's no question. I think the core reason for this is they're mostly family businesses, believe it or not. And so what happens is people hire who they know, what they're used to. Now, I'm not excusing that. I'm not in any way saying that the issue doesn't exist. It does. It needs to be solved in some way or addressed. But to me, Evan, going out and punishing teams in the draft because other teams were able to, because of opportunity or whatever it may be, I think this is the wrong way to do it.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I totally understand the NFL's purpose of putting a rule like this in place, but it just seems silly to me to reward a team for bringing in a minority coach or general manager. It totally goes against the idea of hiring the best person for the job. So I mean, personally, I've seen a lot of feedback out there on this rule on Twitter, and it seems like a lot of people are against it. Both minority players have spoken out against how they feel it's a very foolish rule to put in place, and it's not really addressing the problem that the NFL has.
Yeah, and that's it. I think that's the issue. Again, it's okay if this is a issue that the NFL owners want to take up because it should be, right? You should address the elephant in the room. I don't have a problem with that. What I do have a problem with is prescribing a solution when you don't understand the core issue of the problem and why it's happening. So tell me why is the NFL not as equitable as other leagues, let's say, in the hiring of coaches or front office folks? And actually, I know a lot of the focus, Evan, goes on the coaching ranks, but it's an even bigger problem in the front offices. If you look at the front offices of NFL teams, that's where you really see, I think, a lack of diversity. And again, the Raiders were at the forefront of this, whether it was Art Shell, whether it was Amy Trask, you name it, whether it was going back to the 60s with Tom Flores as their quarterback, right, and as their head coach too. To me, that's part of the issue is where is the problem and how do you find out how you address it? Now, again, leadership issues and all the such. I think those are what the league needs to do. And to me, Evan, owners need to figure out, okay, what is the issue and how do we make it equitable? The Rooney Rule was the way to do this, apparently. And we know the Rooney Rule, while most things that have good intentions show up that way, they start well. They just don't deliver on what they were meant to do. And I think when you look at not only the Rooney Rule, but when you look at this proposal, that again, I think universally, at least 90% of my observations of people talking about it disagree with it. Okay, but to me, it's like again, I find, and I'm going to get on my soapbox, Evan. So get ready. In society today, we have huge problems. There's no question, and we always want an easy answer. We don't ever want to do the hard work to peel back the layers of what the issue really is. And I think this is that again, Evan. I think we're not finding out what the issue is and why there isn't more opportunity.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have the exact answer myself, but I think, as you mentioned, these NFL teams, they're family businesses. Often they're passed down from one generation to the next. And I think these teams have a certain model in place, and they're kind of set in their ways as how they want to run that business and the type of people they want to hire. And I just think they're not doing a good enough job of being open minded to new ideas and new
Yeah.
philosophies and hiring different types of people. So I think it kind of comes down to that.
Yeah, I know. I agree with that 100%. And I think that you have to look at, again, the system, how it's baked together, what is causing that lack of diversity. Because again, the NFL, if you look at the population of the NFL from a player perspective, heavily African American, right? There's no question. And so why is that not represented in the coaching ranks? And could it be, by the way, that it's not just an issue that the NFL can solve? See, that's the other thing. I understand the NFL is all powerful and the way people look at them and what they're able to do. But if that's the case, are there enough opportunities for coaches and general manager candidates, people working in the front office, working in athletics in college, that creates the opportunity and experience needed and able to or to enable them maybe a step up to do that? And again, you hire the best person, absolutely. But is this an issue that we need to look at that's deeper than just, hey, hire the right person in the NFL? I don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert in it. We'll work on getting a guest on it because I think it is an issue, and I think you have to figure out what you're going to do. But to me, this really cheapens everything and doesn't give, I think, a clear opportunity to find a fix for it. What you're going to do is you're going to preemptively punish teams. But let's say they didn't have any openings, right? Because the proposal, here's the proposal, just so you guys know, in case you haven't read up on it. An NFL team that hires a minority coach will be rewarded by having its third round pick the following year before the coach's second season improved by 6 places. Okay? A team that hires a minority at general manager would see that third round pick jump 10 spots. And for the NFL team that hires minorities as coaches and general manager, a jump of 16 whole spots. So again, let's say you're a team that finishes in the bottom 10 and you have a number 10 pick in that round. And then you have a team that won the Super Bowl, and their coach leaves and they clean house and they hire a general manager and a coach, both minorities. You could have the Super Bowl team jumping up. So to me, again, it's not an equitable system. I don't know who came up with it, but again, Evan, I think that the NFL addressed the issue. It's good that they're talking about it, but come up with a different way.
Yeah, what's interesting is if you think about, excuse me, the Rooney Rule. The Rooney Rule was put in place just to get minority coaches interviews, just an opportunity to interview. And clearly that has not satisfied what the NFL is looking for. And now they're stepping it up and making a greater incentive that now if you hire, not only do you, if you interview a minority candidate, if you hire that person, now we'll even reward you with, like, as you said, a draft pick. So they're definitely trying to apply more pressure to teams. But again, I agree with you 100%. I don't think this answers the problem. And without having any data here to say, is it a lack of candidates, or are our owners just not willing to go with a minority person? It's hard to pinpoint the exact problem right here.
Yeah, and I have John Q in our YouTube chat saying, stop talking in circles. That's the reason why you penalize the teams, to stop the owners from BSing with their staff. Yeah, but John, here's the point though. You penalize teams that didn't do anything. What if you didn't have an opening? So if you don't have an opening, you should be leapfrogged? That makes no sense. It's not logical. You can say I'm talking in circles, but here's the reality of it. The reality of it is, if you don't have an opportunity to open up a job and consider a minority candidate, then you get punished. How is that fair? How is it fair to punish a team that did nothing wrong? Now, that team then has an opening and they hire a minority, then they get rewarded. But if they don't have an opening and they don't hire a minority, then they get punished. It makes little sense to me. So I get it. The issue has to be addressed. Okay. But again, this isn't the way to do it. I mean, I don't find anybody out there who believes that this is the way to do it. And I agree with them. I just don't think that you're going to get to solve the problem, nor get to the core issue of what the problem is, which is making sure there's an equal playing field and level playing field for opportunity, not to get a job, but for opportunity.
And Scott, and one other thing I was just thinking, what about an organization like the Raiders, who have been trailblazers in this type of thing. I mean, Reggie McKenzie was the general manager of this team just a couple years ago. Now, I know
Right.
this would be a rule that would be put in place in the future, but again, you would be penalizing a team like the Raiders, who may not have an opening at that point in time, but has always been an organization that has done a great job at addressing this issue. So again, it's very dicey.
No, and again, anybody who denies that there's an issue, I think there's an issue there, a problem there. Excuse me, I'm doubling up on my words. But to me, again, I think that you can't punish teams for not doing something when they had nothing to do. Now you can say, well, then if the teams didn't have an opening, then they don't get punished. But then you're already going back on what you say that system is going to be, which is letting the leapfrog a pick. So we'll have to see what happens. But I think the discussion is always healthy. Any way you can make the game better, to me, I'm all for it. And like you said, Evan, the Raiders have been at the forefront of that and continue to do that. Although they got criticized with the hiring of John Gruden, and the fact that they wanted to go get their guy, but that's a whole different equation, I think. All right, well, we're going to step aside for our first break. When we come back, we're going to talk with Shlomo Sprung. He is a sports writer with Forbes.com, and we're going to talk about the Raiders ticket prices. A lot of you upset this week saying you can't come to games now because the secondary market has gotten so high that you're just not going to be able to afford it. We're going to talk to him about the reasons why the prices, and it's not just because the Raiders are in the first year here. There's other reasons there too. But why are the ticket prices the hottest in the NFL? Why are they so high? We'll talk to Shlomo Sprung right after the break. You're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140.